Hello, everybody. This is Darren Redmond with the Again for the First Time podcast, and it's produced by Jake Redmond. And I am so excited for so many reasons about our guest today. So much I want to talk about. Midday host over at Mega 97.9, been there forever. I want to talk about radio because I am a child of radio. I'm a child of radio and television. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but we're talking to the voice of sports in Fresno, and just a potpourri of sports. But boy, like people argue, like, is it the chocolate or the peanut butter? Is the Chicago pizza better than the New York pizza? And the question that a lot of people here in Fresno have is: Brian Anthony known as Third Down Thunder, or is he known for just saying, Fresno, let's play some hockey? So which one is it? We'll discuss. Brian Anthony is our guest today, my guest today. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, it's doing real well. I'm glad you're doing well, and thank you for inviting me here on your podcast.
Well, I appreciate that more than you know, and I tell you, there's so much I want to talk about, but I want to first start with your work over at Mega 97.9. Even before that, tell people who don't know, that one person who may not know who you are, a little background about yourself. Were you born and raised in the Central Valley? And then if you could segue into how did you become interested in radio?
Well, I am a native of the San Joaquin Valley, Central California. I was born in Porterville. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a farm community in Tulare County, Tipton, California. Lived Beautiful. There about 22 years. The first 22 years of my life. Did a little bit of farming, but not much. In high school, rode the tractors and so forth, and just making some money out of high school. I started my music career when I was 4 years old. I got in front of a piano, and evidently I was pretty good at it, and my mother kept me going with the lessons. A cousin of mine played a saxophone. She kind of gave it up, and I picked it up when I was 7, and it became natural to me to play this instrument.
Oh, beautiful.
As I got into high school, I managed to learn about 40 different instruments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I kept it going. And then I finally, when I reached my 20s, I just kind of gave it up. But till this day, I can still play all 40 of them or more. I can still read music. I can pick it up, in an instant. But I just don't do it as much as I did back then.
Well, first of all, when would you find the time? Because you're either on the air, on the radio, or doing one of the many other things that you do, whether it's with the Rawhides or with the Monsters or with a lot of the other schools out there. But let's go back to, and I mentioned to you as a friend off the air. You reach when you're a certain age, there was television and there was radio. And television was my daytime after school. Radio is where I got my bones of education. And here's what I mean. I had a little transistor radio as a kid.
I think we all did.
Yes, right? And I try to explain that. Even though my son very well, and people they get it, but they don't get it. I mean, that was your window to the world, wasn't it?
It was just a little bit bigger than our smartphones today. Those things were a little bit wider, but basically that side, and it got AM and FM radio. And it was interesting about FM radio. And like you said, some people might not know, but back then, probably in the 60s and 70s, the latter part of the FM dial would actually go a little bit further than you'd actually, I think 108 as far as it goes. But 108 to 109 was the police frequencies for Los Angeles PD.
I did not know that.
So if you were in Los Angeles, you tuned past 108, you had a scanner in your hands.
Excellent. So much want to ask about that, because when I could not sleep, I just put the radio on, and there were three things that I would listen to: sports. And it was beautiful when my Mets were on the West Coast, because the games didn't start till 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
So, and that was like a thrill for me. And I would imagine what Dodger Stadium would look like, or what Candlestick Park would look. And back then, the Padres played at Jack Murphy Stadium. And then I was blessed to be able to go and visit. So I never went to a game at Jack Murphy, and unfortunately, with the Giants, the same thing. I went to what I still call AT&T Park, but I teared up when I went to Dodger Stadium for the first time.
Oh yeah,
because as a kid, you just do.
yeah.
You know.
What's interesting about that, you were talking about going to bed, and my bedtime was probably about 9:30, but in the summertime, during those young years, 9:30. Guess what? That's towards the end of the bowl game at Dodger Stadium, and we got the broadcast very loud over in Tulare County.
Right.
And so I would always listen to the games. Vince Scully. Yeah, probably the last 6, 7 innings. I'm sorry, from inning 6, 7, 8, 9. That's probably what I would hear, and I just became a big fan.
You know, in life, I jump around. So I'm going to jump around here. You mentioned Vince Scully, and I want to compare him to what you do. And at least explain to those who are listening to us, and there will be a lot of your fans and people who are sports nuts and what you do on the radio, how hard it is for what he did alone to keep people so entertained. And I ask you because you work alone and you keep people entertained. And it's very tough to do. And it's not dismissing the hard work that 2 people in the booth or sometimes 3 people in the booth do. But how'd you learn that? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, if it wasn't for the telephone, I tell you, I'd probably be bored. You get phone calls left and right, request lines that was open. You start talking to people, and you do your job. You pick the music, and music is not what you actually think it is. You just don't just pick a song and then that's what you play. It's actually certain songs need to be played at a certain time. It's there's a reason for it. Same thing as why commercials on a 30-minute TV show come on at a certain time. There's a reason for it. There's technology. I should really say technology. It's been studied, and that's basically how they sell airtime is when you're watching TV or listening to the radio, because at a certain time, that's where we want you.
So how did you break into broadcasting?
I have a relative that was she was a cheerleader, and they had these dances in my hometown in Tipton, and they would rent a jukebox for these dances back then.
You do realize that half the people listening to us don't know what a jukebox is.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I better explain what a jukebox is. Obviously, there is a jukebox mode on your software, but it's just a big refrigerator, glass. It had records in it, and you would push if it's a song you like, and if it was B1, you push B1, and it would play it. You put a quarter, you put $1 in there, and it'd play the songs you wanted. And that's what they rented. And the jukebox was obviously, you didn't have to put quarters in, you just push the buttons to the songs. And I said, well, you know what? I have a nice stereo system at home. Why don't I have the records? Why don't I just go ahead and play the music for her? And they made money. And then I started doing it professionally. That was probably the first time people were hiring a DJ to do their dances. And I was probably one of the first in the area to start doing it, being a mobile DJ. And from there, I got into radio, back then you had to have a license because of the Cold War was still going on. So if something would happen, you needed to know exactly what you should be doing, whether you hide underneath the desk or you keep the radio station going. And there was a reason for those tones. This is an alert for the emergency broadcast. This is only a test, and that was it. That's what you had to learn what that did. Back then, the stations where I started, they were like station number 15. So one went off, number 1 went off, number 2 would go on, then number 2 went. It was a long story, but I got into that. I studied that, and from there, I became a nightclub DJ in Vice City it used to be called the Holiday Inn, 198 and 99.
I've stayed there many times during my career in Yellow Pages.
And that was probably the most popular spot it was the early 80s. And that had to be the most popular spot in the area because that's all you had was in Vice City, Tulare, Dinuba, Exeter, Hanford, and then obviously you got the boys from Lemoore, Lemoore Naval Area. And they would bus them to that spot. And we were packed because we were the only one in that area.
Oh, that's great. And again, I'm full of segues. I don't know if you had a chance yet to see the new Tom Cruise Top Gun movie, but one of the main characters is from the Lemoore Air Station, which is so great.
Yeah.
You know, so you break in and you have a great voice, obviously. And I try to tell people this, and now that I'm, I'm an older guy, older person. Longevity is not shtick, and it's people. They want to strike. People look at it. Look at an on-air personality like day training. Like they're going to strike it rich in 5 minutes,
Right.
and they burn out quick. And they talk to me a little bit about longevity.
I think I've had the opportunities to go to major league teams. Okay. And I made the decision that I was not going to do it. I've announced for major league teams part-time, but I made the decision that if I were to pack my bags and go to a major town or a large city, and then I find out 2 or 3 years later that, oh, hey, Brian, thanks a lot, but we're going to take a different route. And I started thinking, why do I need to take my kids out of school to another school, move to another place, start a new mortgage on a home? Mm-hmm. And if it's 3 years later, hey, I still got 17 years to go on that house. Now I got to find a job and I'm stuck, or, I move on. I pretty much had it made in the collegiate field at Fresno State and in minor league sports here in Fresno. So I made the decision to stay in minor league sports and at Fresno State. Longevity, do your job. You're not going to get rich the next day. I've had some people ask me, when am I going to get the jobs like you? I said, how old are you? This one gentleman, he was 27 years old. And I said, you know what? Give yourself another 5 years, and I bet you'll make it to the majors. Sure enough, 5 years later, AAA called him up, and then he went to the majors.
Well, that's outstanding. And I just want to tell a personal story about you that I'm not surprised when I see it, because we work together with the Monsters, but I am so invigorated by it. I don't care if it is a January Thursday night game. You're a pro's pro. You're making sure that you have your copy all set, your advertisers all set, breaks, your people, and they are responding to what you say, and you run it. And it's not just that you want to do a good performance. I'm speaking for you, and then please follow up. You respect your audience, and you respect the sport. But we both know some people don't. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, when you go to a game, it has to be the first time you've been to the game. Okay, you have to think that. You have to also think that the audience, there may be somebody, it may be 1 or it may be 10 that never been to that game or never have been to a professional sporting event or even a collegiate game. You always have to remember that somebody may be new. Just like when you meet somebody for the first time, what is it that you need to do? You better smile, because you only have one chance to make an impression the first time. So always smile, say hi, and always remember that one fan may be the first time there and you want them back.
And I think you started hockey in 91. I think that sounds about right. And we'll talk about that and baseball and Third Down Thunder and all. You bring your A game. And I'm sure there are times you're not feeling well, and I'm sure life gets in the way. And but you're not doing it for $1 million paycheck. You're doing it because you have grace and that you have a respect for the organization that you work for and for your fan. And that's my long-winded way of saying this. My brother and I, who might have been on this interview with us, but he wasn't able to make it, we grew up listening to people. And when you think about the Mets in the 60s and in the 70s, it's Bob Murphy, Ralph Kiner, Lindsey Nelson. You've earned that prestige. You, Paul Leffler, there's a few people out there that when you have an image of Fresno Falcon Hockey or Fresno Pacific or Visalia Rawhides, not only do you see their logo, you hear your voice. What is that like?
sometimes you ask yourself, that is me. That's what I sound like. Because you're your worst critique on anything, no matter what. And I tell the new people that get into radio, they say, well, I sound terrible. And I go, no, you're always your worst critique. There are certain people that have recorded commercials for the first time. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, I don't like it. I said, you're fine. It's okay. You are your worst critique, and you'll think that it's the worst thing you've done in your life. You've done it. Once you listen to it, now improve from what you have done. Listen to what you recorded. And I do that with baseball a lot of times, and I do that with hockey. In fact, just last week, I took one game from the Vice City Rawhide, and I watched it. Mm-hmm. And what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? What do I need to improve? When I play the music is just not all over the place. I actually take an hour and a half in the day, usually about 11 o'clock in the morning, till about 12:30, and I pre-program the music from the first inning all the way to the ninth inning, including the seventh inning stretch.
Right.
That way you're not playing the same music every day. And there's situations in baseball. There's more than baseball there is in hockey. You got foul balls, you got strikeouts, you got walks, home runs, stolen bases, and so forth. Great plays. So the thinking when you're there for the innings, there's no thinking of what song you're going to play. It's already programmed. And it's not just one genre. It's a lot of them, because you have people there from 3 years old to 110. Right. So you better make sure that you are well equipped and you know what you're playing. And I'll give us some advice for people that want to do this. And for bands at nightclubs, play your best songs first, because once you do that, they're there. Right. Okay. And if you play them again later, they've already forgotten you played them earlier, because they're having a good time. Right. I know. And I did that at nightclubs. I would play my best songs first at nightclubs. I do that at the baseball game. After that, then I'll just start playing a mix of other music. Seventh inning stretch in a baseball game. Yeah, you want to play take me out the ball game, but you want to have a good dance tune. After it's over, people remember. If you're losing 7-0, you're winning 5-2. You want the fans to come back.
Absolutely. And especially in minor league ball or junior hockey, you have to make that an experience. And I see it all the time when we do something like chuck a puck, right? Nobody throws a puck until you say go.
Right. That's a lot of fun, though. A lot of people try to imitate that. I don't know. I've been in other arenas and they try to, but it just not seem to work as well as it does in Fresno.
Oh, it's a staple. It definitely is.
And I guess we should tell them what chuck a puck is, if somebody's not aware.
You know what? Please, you tell them.
At the end of the period, there's 2 intermissions. At the second intermission, we tell everybody, chuck a puck is coming. You go to the front and you buy these orange pucks, or they could be black, and they're just made out of rubber. A soft rubber, foam rubber. And when we're ready to chuck the puck, there's a center dot, or maybe a hula hoop or something to center ice. And the closest one, or if you get into that hole or that circle, with that chuck a puck or that puck, of course you can throw it. It's not going to hurt you, but it can. But it's the safety factor is there. And if it makes it in the hole or nearby, you are the winner, and that's chuck a puck.
And about you not getting hurt. Yeah, as Brian will tell you, people throw them at me.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I keep you all the way to the window and stay away.
Yes, absolutely. It's been said, and I agree with this, and it's not good or bad, that Fresno, more than I'm going to go to the February 14th game on Valentine's Day. It's more of an event kind of place. They like events. Discuss a little bit about that culture we have here, and also how you prepare for each sport a little differently or the same way. I'm sure there are basic things you do, but there's probably a little bit of things like during baseball, when the manager comes and speaks to to the pitcher, you got to kind of build in that time. In hockey, there's other things you got to do. There's a fight. There's this or that. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
That's right off the bat. You got to play some songs, or the music. It takes part of it, and that's all. It's basically a hotkey on your computer. Okay. for a fight, for a hockey, mound visit for the pitcher. It's a hotkey. But there's always, well, not necessarily with the Monsters, but with the Rawhide, there is an ad regarding the visit. What this mound visit is brought to you by, or this pitch and change is brought to you by, and it's written for you. You just got to be prepared to say it, because you do have to give them a few mentions.
Right.
And then you play the song, and from that point on, when the batter steps into the batter's box in baseball, according to the rule, you have to start pulling the music down.
Right. That brings up something that we talked about offline one time, and if you don't mind sharing your perception, because I get asked this question all the time about you. Because especially at Gateway, even at Selling, you're sitting on top of the players. A lot of times in between the penalty box. I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
What kind of chirping have you heard over the years?
Oh, I've heard a lot, but I'm going to tell you, and I think I've explained this to you and a lot of people. It's bad at first, but I would say it would be maybe about 20% of the time they're in there. That's what you're going to hear. But the 80% is usually something funny, asking about their history. One of the players will know somebody's brother. They'll ask about how he's doing. Does he still have that girlfriend, and so forth? And my mom didn't like her, and typical young men questions and conversations.
Right.
And a lot of people think they're chirping at each or yelling at each other, but they're not. They're just talking. But sometimes you get the two that will just continue, and you just got to tell them, hey, enough. That's enough.
So last year, the Monsters won their Pacific Division Championship for the second year in a row. And I've always wanted to ask people who do what you do this question. Do you prepare what you're going to say, or does it come organically?
It's both.
Gotcha.
You have to be ready, because you don't know what may happen. You learned the arena. You learned like Gateway, because you have to avoid, and when it's negative, you have to avoid the riot, or you have to avoid something that may be bad. Right. But when it comes to winning, you should be prepared what song you're going to play. You should be prepared what you're going to say. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. The Monsters are going to move on. The Rawhide are going to move on, and so forth. Unfortunately for the Monsters, we move away for the finals. But right. Like in Visalia, those can stay. Those can stay here.
People don't realize, but I'm going to talk about the Visalia Rawhides for a minute. That stadium is a beautiful stadium. I mean, Grizzlies beautiful too. Don't get me wrong. But like I know, again, a Met fan. I mean, way back in '71, their farm team played in Visalia.
That's right.
There's a lot of history. Talk a little bit about that history in that park.
Well, you got the Cincinnati Reds, New York Mets, Chicago White Sox, Kansas City Royals.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and now we have the Arizona Diamondbacks that were a farm team too. So there's some history. 1946 is when it was built. The actual grandstand, that dirt that fills the grandstand, was dirt that came out of the ground at 198.
Wow.
So they moved it from there to Recreation Park and I guess they didn't realize it was going to be a grandstand, but that's where they put it.
A little birdie told us, and maybe you can announce it, and I'll take the blame for it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That we may be in selling for a weekend series, right? That's what
I'm hearing that as well, and that would be outstanding. That would be excellent. Would love to do some games at Selland Arena, and I would love to see that. For
those who have never seen a game at Selland, with its low ceiling and it's just this atmosphere, talk a little bit about Selland.
I don't think we're ever going to get an arena similar to that anymore. It's because of the way it's built. A lot of arenas are actually, I use my hands. These are the seats. Save Mart Center is like this. Selland Arena seats are like this.
Yes.
So you can see it. The V gets a little closer, and so therefore you're looking right down at the game.
It's not a bad seat.
Right. You may be you may be 15 feet from the ice over here, or even 20 or even 30. But when you're lifted up like that, you become closer and you're looking right down at the game.
Right. And it gets loud.
Yes. Of course, that arena was built for a projected sound.
Was it? I did not know that.
Yeah. It was built in the 60s. It's not built like Hollywood Theater, the Dome, the Bowl, Hollywood Bowl.
Right, Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah. That amplifies the sound. And with the arena, the way its seating was, and of course, the north and south seats were not built until I believe the 80s.
There was a bar there.
Yeah, it was just a square.
Right.
And I think one of the last concerts when it was a square, I think it would have been probably Elvis Presley. Wow. During that time. I did see Elvis Presley. I got lucky.
Very nice.
My mother took me to the concert.
That's
I believe that would have been that would have been in the early 70s. But there was a lot of concerts. I think I saw Scorpions there.
Right.
Foghat. I think Foghat. AC/DC got ran out of town back then.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't remember. I think they opened up for Jefferson Starship. I think I may be wrong, but yeah. And look at them now.
So, what was the best concert you've ever been to?
The best. You know what? It wasn't not at Selland Arena.
Right. Yeah, wherever. Wherever.
Yeah, it was at the fairgrounds, and it was the band called Skillet.
Oh,
the Monster
nice.
Theme song. Yes. At the Fresno Fairgrounds, and they did a tremendous show, and I was impressed. I was very impressed. Of course, they had the female drummer, and and they did show up at Gateway Eye Center back when we first became the Monsters. They wanted to see the team,
which is great. And
yeah.
And by the way, I know some people I love that song. You can't play that song. For me, really, there's 1.5 answers. And by the way, an honorable mention was Paul McCartney at the Mart Center just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, okay. I hear about that.
He did a great job, and he was, into his 70s at the time, and he did a great job. And he opened up with A Hard Day's Night, which just kind of blew me away. 1977, the Palladium Theater, New York City, I saw the Ramones. And that was like, that was very interesting. It was just unique, which was great. But mine was, I was working at a beach club in Brooklyn at the time. And there were these tours of these guys and ladies who maybe their peak years have gone, but they're still going to put on a great performance. So I was also doing security at the time for our talent that would show up there. So it was Chubby Checker.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, and I always admired his music and he kept me twist and everything. And long story short, I'm backstage with him and he's by himself. And, they would come, they'd do like 5 songs, 7 songs. And it was for Decoration Day, later Memorial Day. And he goes, hey, do you know where I get something to eat? And we had a concession stand, but I said, well, do you want me to go get you some real New York pizza? Right. And he said, yeah, I like that. So I went and on my own, I went and I got him a pie. And in New York, we call it a pie. And so I bring it back and he's sitting there. And I get emotional about this. And he goes, would you mind sitting with me while I eat? Right. And I sat and had pizza with Chubby Checker.
Wow.
For about a half hour. And we just talked.
Yeah.
And then he performed. And what a great guy. And now what is it? 40 years later, I still remember it like it's yesterday. Wow.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
So you must have met a lot of people. Do you have anybody like that just touched you almost on a human way?
Well, I have met a lot of artists, especially in the 80s. The one, his name, I can't remember his name. My mother and father, they used to love this song back in the 60s. Renee.
Yeah.
And he performed it. He has been performing at our concerts for Mega 97.9 and still does today and does the song. And I talked to him for a while, and I said, by the way, my mother and father loved your song back in the 60s. It was Spanish. El Mucho de Te Quiero. That was the name of the song. And I said, who knows? I may be because of you. I may be here because of you, you know. And we sat down and we talked. I got a picture of him. And of course, my father and mother both have passed on, but I kept it. And that was probably the one guy that I really admired talking to.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And it's those kind of things, right? And a lot of times it's not the biggest star in the world. It's somebody that connects you to a memory that you have or that kind of thing. I want to kind of go back, since we're talking about this stuff, to something I asked earlier. And do you feel responsibility might be the wrong term, but do you realize how many people grew up with you and their children now are growing up with you, in some cases their grandchildren?
Well,
that you are part of their life. I mean, I talk about this to kids sometimes. I do some little bit of public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
You're 35 years old. You're in a job you really don't love. And you think about, for some reason, it pops into your mind the time you went to Selling or Gateway or whatever, and you heard Brian Anthony saying, you know, goal scored by, and do you realize you're part of people's lives that way?
You know, that you mentioned that, I've got to tell you this story. I used to work 7 to midnight on KNAX, which was country music back in the early 90s. And when my son was playing baseball, playing Little League Baseball and so forth, I would get mothers and fathers that would actually tell me, my son is named after you.
Wow. There's nothing better.
And obviously working 7 to midnight, I know what was going on. And there it is. Brian Anthony Smith, Brian Anthony, whatever, you know.
Right.
And we the last count was 11. 11. And it was like, wow, you know, you have to think about it. It's like, people named their kid after me.
Right.
Yeah. Excellent.
And before we kind of wrap up, I want to ask you about, how do you're Brian Anthony, and you don't get the luxury of, quote unquote, publicly having a bad day. You know, like, and I talk to a lot of people, as you know, with the podcast 2 years now. And what I mean by that is, people love you and there's a lot of grace, but if you just, I don't want to be left out, but and some young person or somebody says, it's Brian Anthony, hello, you got to put on the face, and yet, because you owe it to your audience. How do you find time to relax, and what do you do to relax? And talk about all of that.
Well, I'm just going to say what the gentleman says, the corner gas station. You walk in, you always have a smile.
Right.
And you got to keep that up. In fact, we were at In-N-Out Burger, Jensen in 99. And I just walked by these people, and my guests, all they heard was, hey, that's Brian Anthony walking by, you know, and I go, you know, and I go, I hope I smiled at him.
Right, yes. Yes.
And
I can't speak for you because I'm not always with you, but I think most people respect your privacy in that, like, if you're eating dinner with the family or the grandkids, they let you do you, right? Maybe they say hello, but they're not mobbing and annoying, and
yeah.
You know, would you agree with that people are respectful most of the time?
Yes. I do spend some time away from this area, just because I want to make sure that I don't get myself in trouble and do something wrong. And just like this coming weekend, I'm going to travel to Las Vegas, park my car.
Right.
I'm not going to get in my car for at least 4 days, and just have a good time.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. And as you know, it's no secret, I hide in my backyard with a cigar and some whiskey for that same reason, because I don't need to be seen somewhere. Oh, and I'm having my one, or
Yeah.
oh, he had his 75th, and
Yeah.
no, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have one, and all of a sudden, it's, yeah, you're right, number 75. And
Yeah.
that's what it can lead to.
Yes. So before I let you go, and there's probably a lot, out of all the games that you called, of the different sports, personalities, tell me about one that really impressed you on and off the field, the ice, the pitch, whatever the case may be, that you're like, wow, it was a thrill to call him or her.
It's really close. Some people that like hockey don't like basketball, they don't like baseball. Same with baseball, they don't like hockey, they don't like this, they don't like that. Baseball and hockey are pretty much tied. When I come home tired, I know I did a good job. I know it was a good game. Because there was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and a lot of things for me to do to keep the people cheering, yelling, screaming. But of course, if you've seen the hockey games at San Marino, or even when it's Mart, I always have somebody to my side, another person on the microphone that helps me out as well. So I don't want to take full credit, but yes, I am the lead voice of those games.
This is Darren talking. You're steering the ship, in my opinion. That's all I'll say. How's that?
I love doing it. I just did some high school all-star games, high school championships at the beginning of the month of June, and I enjoyed it.
Right. That's great. That's great. So before I go, here's my question. And I always have to ask a ridiculous question. And I told you I'm a television radio guy, but I'm going to ask you about movies. It's 1:00 in the morning. You're tired. You're exhausted. But you cross the screen and this movie's on. What's the one movie that will stop you in your tracks? You might have seen a million times. You're watching the rest of the movie. What would it be?
There's about 3 of them.
Give them.
Red Dawn. I'll sit down and watch it over and over. I don't know what it is.
It's a great movie.
Over and over. The original.
Yeah, Patrick Swayze one.
Yeah. Rocky. Rocky 1 and 2.
Right.
I'll sit down, watch that, and there's a 4th one. Las Vegas.
Very nice.
Very nice. And to tell you the truth, the movie Las Vegas, since I travel there a lot, that's the closest.
I was just going to ask you that.
That's the closest you're going to find that it's like being in Las Vegas, right. Especially when the people come up to you and ask you your name and hey, you just won a couple $100. You've been in that machine. You start thinking, oh my God, I'm getting kicked out. Now They're going to be probably going to do you good.
Right. 2 things there. One, I listen to a lot of podcasts, as you know, and I was listening to Talking Sopranos recently, and one of the hosts was talking about he's always he likes to gamble and he goes to different casinos, and some of them are maybe not regulated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get what you're talking about.
Yes, and he remembers going to one in New York City one time, and he realized they really liked him there because he's got a name and he was on The Sopranos and Michael Imperioli. And then he realized that he wasn't supposed to win.
And
he goes, it's very subtle. They don't threaten you, but you know that maybe it's time you need to go.
Yeah.
and leave a big tip.
You know what? But I found when they came up to me a couple of times, I just answered the questions. And I got rewarded for being there. And there's a come on back. That's
which is great.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, one of my go-to movies now is a very recent one. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 1917.
Okay. Yeah.
About World War. That movie, that scene when he is running across as all the other people are running into the fray just gets me. That movie now recently, it's happened a couple times at night. You're ready to go to bed and whoa, okay, putting this on. But Brian, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me.
I enjoyed it as much as I did. And
I enjoyed it.
Tell people real quick, Mega 97.9 midday. Tell everybody about it. It's a great station, people. I have it on at work. I listen during my lunch break. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, we've been on the air since 1998. And I've been on there since that time. I was sitting at a fast food restaurant when the general manager called me up. Hey, that new radio station we're putting on the air. I want to put you on for a couple hours. And I said, well, I'm eating a hamburger. He said, bring it. And I've never left since then. I've been there. And the thing is, I was away from that frequency, 97.9, for about 4 months. And I was on there as KNEX when it was country. This is when they switched formats. So technically, I've been on that frequency since 1989.
That's unbelievable.
Long time.
Yeah, of consistent excellence. Because
And
nobody,
fun.
because nobody keeps you, as you know, in your business, nobody keeps you just because you're a good guy. You deliver the goods.
Got to work hard.
You got to work hard. You got to
Go for work every day.
Well, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Take care now.
You too.